Guys, this is Ryan. I work with Dan over at Velocity, and I've been doing a lot of React Native consulting lately. And Dan asked that I do a couple tutorials on the React Native side. I know a lot of people have been asking for some, so today we're going to build basically like a Snapchat clone, and I have another video that's up on getting started, to set up your development environment, and it should only take like 15-20 minutes, but I know on the Android side it's a little more difficult. But for iOS, it's pretty straightforward. So if you're working on a Mac and you want to use the iOS simulator, it's pretty straightforward. So if you need more help setting up, you could check out that video. But I'm gonna kind of just get into the project so we don't lose too much time. So the first thing you want to do is just make sure you have the React Native CLI installed globally, and I think it's version 48 now. Well, CLI is version 2, but we do React Native init. So this is how you create a new project. If you've used like Express before, it's like kind of like the Express generator or a Create React app, or it's basically what you need to do to start a project. So I'm going to call it Snapchat clone, and just do that on your desktop wherever you do your development. And let's see what React Native version we're on. Yeah, React Native 48. Again, I'm going to put a tutorial up if you need more setup help, but also you can just go to the React Native docs, and they're actually pretty good. I mean, you could click your development environment, Mac, Windows, Linux, your target OS. If you were on Windows, they won't let you do iOS and vice versa, but you still do Android. And the app is pretty much going to be the same for the most part. I'd say you could probably get like 80 to 90% code reuse. Depending on how complex the project is, they can be, could be just like 100% reuse. But so my point is that even if maybe you don't have a Mac and you're on Windows or Linux, you can develop your React Native app for Android, and then either a friend or a coworker or someone, you could maybe they'll use their computer. You could kind of do an iOS build and see how it looks. Again, it's pretty similar, so do it for Android, and then if you need to do the iOS builds, find someone with a Mac. But yeah, go through the docs if you have any questions, or I'll do another video on setting up. One thing I forgot to mention, but I'm sure everyone already has, just need Node installed. And if you need to check, you just type node-v, and see I'm running 6.10, so I'm slightly behind the current long-term stable, which is 6.11, but for this tutorial that's fine. And then if you don't have it installed, I'm just putting in a wrong command because that's how the system will recognize it. It'll say command not found, so you need to install Node here and then run node-v, and you'll know it's working. Your npm install for the React Native stuff wouldn't have worked either, but make sure you have at least like 6.10 or so installed just in case. So you got Node, React Native, CLI. We initiate the project, so I'm going to cd into it, run npm install. It's going to take a few minutes. Oh yeah, so the first time you set up the project, like we're gonna run another command or two after this. It takes a while, but after that it's pretty quick. So it's not always gonna take this long. That's my point. I lost my bottom toolbar here. That's alright, so once you're in, you already run npm install. Next thing you want to do is run React Native Start. Now this, if you're doing iOS or Android, you're going to have to run either way. It's kind of like a, I guess the easiest way to explain it is like a background bundler task that takes care of a lot of stuff behind the scenes, like bundling your code, loading files, and making it run for native. So you want to do that. And this is the command I was saying the first time is going to take a while. And then I always leave that running in its own tab. Oh, no, okay. So when you run that the first time, then you have to do either React Native run iOS, or if you're on Android, run Android. And I'm doing iOS, so I'm going to do that for now. And so this command is going to take a few minutes. And again, this is only the first time. The rest of the times it's much quicker. It's basically setting up an entire new Xcode project and everything for you. So it's doing a lot of work the first time. And then while I'm doing that, if you're on Android, there's one. Follow the setup in the docs or the video. There's one thing you need to add to your project. Is you go to Android. Yeah, you put it right in the Android root, and I'm going to use the CLI. And you make a file called local.properties. And in this file, I took this from an old project. You just need to give this variable sdk.dir. It's basically a reference to where the Android SDK is stored. Again, it's easy on iOS. Everything's kind of built in. I don't think I have to even set anything like that up. So, yeah, for Android, you need to give a reference. You need to download the SDK yourself. So that's why. But as opposed to Xcode, which comes bundled with iOS. Let's see how this is doing. Yeah, it's still going. While that's going, let me show you. Don't know why I lost my dock. I went to my other screen. I guess that's better though for recording. Okay, so if you were on Android, when I did React Native on iOS, it launches the iPhone for us, etc. I'll just show you real quick on Android, and then I'm going to close it out because with both simulators and the recording running, my fans are going crazy on my computer right now. So let's go to Android, AVD Manager. And I have these devices installed. I had to download these and install them. If you're just starting, I would say check the docs, check the other video I have up, and it's going to, you got to download kind of like a system image for one of these phones. But go here, start one of them up, and then it's going to launch the emulator. And then once it's open, you can do React Native run Android. And the reason I point that out is because when you do React Native run iOS, it just opens up the iOS simulator for you. It doesn't work for Android, it'll just crash. You need to have something up. So look, if I type right now, ABB devices, that's the list of open devices. So if you type that and it's not showing any device, you're not going to be able to run your command. So now that that's open, React Native run Android. Oh, see? Perfect. SDK location not found. Define location with stk.dir and the local.properties file. So I made it, but I forgot to save it, but that's good because you can see that that is required. So I save that file, run it again. Alright, so we have it running on our iPhone, our Android, and I'll give it a second. So here's both apps running, and first thing we want to do is, so each of these apps says to get started, edit index.android.js, and to get started, edit index.ios.js. So if we look in our project, here's our Android and here's our iOS. So each one is running off different files, basically. So if we want to do any changes, so let's change it to Snapchat. I'm gonna save that. If you go into your iOS simulator and do Command D, it opens up this menu. This is how you can reload. Command D or shake your dev menu. And I'm going to turn on hot reloading. So what that does is show you when it loads. Let's say I delete this and I save it, it loads right away. So there's no need to reload. And I mean, for now, it kind of doesn't seem like it'll be that helpful. But if you're working on like a larger app and there's a lot of screens, like you can navigate through a couple of screens to get something, and you have a lot of different data or state on the page, it's actually like really helpful. It saves a ton of time, especially for like styling type stuff. So it's actually one of like the big selling points of React Native, because I believe in Objective-C and Swift and I guess Java on the Android side. Anytime you do any change, you have to do like a whole new build. So I mean, it's pretty cool. So we want to get these same changes showing on the Android side. So I'll copy this, go into here, paste, save, and I want to get my doc back. I don't know why it left. Hold on. This is going to drive me crazy. There we go. Okay, so here's the emulator. So, oh, and here it's Command M, at least on Mac. And then reload. Actually, I'm just going to turn on well, I'm going to close this out. So reload. And then we have our stuff here. And so anytime so basically React Native tells when it runs React Native start, it looks for these files, index.android.js and index.ios.js, as the entry point to the applications. And so it only looks for like the .android if you're on Android, and .ios if you're on iOS extension. Now, this is what I was saying seems kind of stupid because, I mean, it like defeats the whole purpose of React Native cross-platform to do double the work. So this is just because this is like the app entry point, and what we can do is use a common component that they both use, and that is going to allow us to, not have to write our code twice. So I'm going to create a source directory. Make sure you're in your root of your project. Look, if you're on Android, you might have created that local property file. So I'm going to make a source directory, cd into it, and let's make a file called app.js. And then this is just going to be, if you're coming from React, most of this stuff's going to seem pretty straightforward to you. If you've never done anything with React before, I'll explain some stuff as we go, and I'll try to take the approach that most people are probably newer developers, because if you're already a React developer, the React Native stuff should be almost, obviously there's some slight differences. You don't use div tags, you use view tags, and all the tags have different names, but for the most part it should be, I would think if you're like a professional React developer, it's pretty easy to pick up native. So I'm approaching these tutorials from the point of view of more like newer developers who maybe want to get into app development and they're choosing React Native. So so yeah, if you're already a React developer, you'll obviously recognize this. This is pretty much how every component in React, for the most part, starts. You gotta import React and component. Your new component is going to extend component, and then you need a render function and a return. So if usually you're on the web, there's like a div, some content here. In React Native, it's all custom tags. You can go to the docs here. You can see all the different tags they have. So view, touchable, opacity, text input, scroll view, flat list, image. So the docs are actually really good. Facebook did a pretty good job with them. Which I think most people appreciate. So we're going to import a view, text, and style sheet from React Native. And then now a view is like the most basic tag that you can use. And in React, all of your elements need like one parent tag. So you can't just say return like you can't do this. See, expressions must have one parent element. So you'll see for the most part, that I'd say most people just start out with like a view. So it's kind of like your base element. So you'll see this a lot. If we go back to our index.android, you'll see they have a style sheet, a text, and a view, which we've imported in our new file. And I'm going to take all of these styles. I'm just going to literally copy and paste or cut. And I'm going to just delete the iOS ones. And we're going to go to our new file and move them to here. So I just moved in all these styles, and then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to cut and paste all of this. You can get rid of all these imports here, so it's just the app registry at the bottom here. I'll do the same in iOS. And then in our app.js, I still have that in my clipboard. I'm gonna paste this and just make sure your spacing is good. I think it's especially important when working with React and like React components to, I mean, obviously all programmers would say it's important to keep your indentations and spacing right, but like you're saying before, like everything needs a parent tag, so you have a lot of nested tags, and even something simple like a couple of views, you can, your app will crash and you'll be like, why is this crashing? And it'll be, let's pretend we had I'm not really explaining all. You can easily get your nesting off, and then you won't have like a parent container, and your app won't work, and it's kind of hard to go back. So I would definitely make sure to keep your spacing and indentation very clean. So all these styles here, so view style is styles.container. These are just normal JavaScript objects, so styles.container. So that literally just returns these styles in line there, and same with welcome and instructions. So we have all our stuff. Let's change something so that we know that everything is set up properly. So I'm going to get rid of this to get started. Actually, I'm just going to get rid of all of this. So it's just welcome to mediocre Snapchat clone. So save that. It's going to crash. Oh, not yet. Oh, I haven't saved these, that's why. We need to import the app now to our other components. So it's in the same root directory, /source/app. And again, this is just app.js. There's no .android.js or .ios.js. So now you can see how they can all use the same elements. You don't have to specify the extension. So I'm just going to import app here. And I'm going to do the same here. And this is just a single tag, so it doesn't need to be wrapped in anything. But if I had another app here, if I want to do two, it's going to be an error. It needs to be wrapped in a view. You always need like one parent tag. So I'm going to save these. And it appears to be working right there. So reload this. Oop, there we go. So now we have a common component we could do our development from. So we're going to start doing all our development in this source directory now, and we don't have to worry about iPhone and Android. So I'm going to close out. For me, I'm just going to use the iOS simulator. So I'm going to close out this Android simulator, and later on, what I do is I kind of like check in on it. So when I'm developing, I don't just keep checking on both. I'll do development, get some work done, and then I'll go check in on Android, make sure everything works. Lately, I've been having some trouble with like some animations. Like I'll run some animations on iOS, and they're really smooth, and I'll go to Android, and they're not as fast. So like that's something where I might then separate out like a certain component, and one might not have the same animation or small one. So that's what I was saying about like 80 to 90% code reuse, and most of like styling, that type of stuff is going to be pretty similar, but maybe you'll check the iPhone, the Android, and like maybe they account for this right here, this top bar differently, and you might have an issue. But I find it easier just to develop on one and then kind of check in later and attack those problems as they come up. But I think that's it for now. I'm going to end this video before it gets too long. Next up, we're going to work on setting up a list of messages, and then we're going to we're going to move the messages over, so we're retrieving them from a server, because then we'll be able to have them deleted when we open them. I mean, kind of how Snapchat works. So that's it for this video. The next one should be pretty good, and I'm pretty excited. So